And he's describing in text 15, that's the highest perfection. Pure devotion to the Supreme with mind absorbed in him. And 16, from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. It's not a bad bargain. It's not a good bargain. The choice shouldn't be difficult. Why is the choice a little difficult? The choice is a little difficult because we're attached to something other than that which is eternal, the Supreme Person, the abode of the Supreme Person, being in loving service to the Supreme Person. So we take some other object of service and become attached to that other object of service, whatever that might be, something that's limited and temporary. That's unfortunate. It says, text 16, one who attains me, my abode, never takes birth again. Purnar Janma Na. Purnar Janma Na. There's another place where Krishna uses the same language. No more birth if you simply understand the transcendental nature of Krishna's birth or appearance in this world and his activities. Purnar Janma Na. If we can actually understand who is Krishna, then dedicating ourselves to Krishna is very natural. It follows. So this chapter, again, attaining the Supreme. And now I'm going to go to two more verses that are very similar to these. Chapter 8, text 21. That which the Vedantists describe as unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns, that is my supreme abode. He's making an advertisement. Come on over, guys. Don't stay in that place of misery. Come on over. And once you attain it, there's no coming back. There's no greater perfection. There's no misery. There's lots of no's. There's no touch. There's no law of karma. There's no modes of nature. Shouldn't be a hard choice. But we're conditioned. And condition means we're attached to the modes and we're attached to other things and other objects and other sources of happiness. It's not really a source of happiness. It looked like happiness. It looked like pleasure, but it turns out to be something else. Therefore, attaining, it's very rare, according to what Krishna says elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita. It's very rare to come to this stage. Out of many, many thousands, Manushanam Sahasreshu, Kaschit Yatati Siddhaye, maybe you'll find someone striving for perfection. And maybe out of those who achieve perfection, meaning understanding their spiritual identity, hardly one knows me in truth. In other words, it's a tall mountain and not too many occupants on the top of that tall mountain. And why? Same reason, because we're attached to the idea, the notion, the hope, the expectation that there's some happiness in this field of the temporary. And the last verse, for this evening's discussion. It's text 22. Now, Krishna is speaking as if it's someone else, but he says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed devotion. Notice all these 5 verses that I identified here, that's on the same theme. And this is summarizing that theme. It's unalloyed devotion. We'll speak about what is unalloyed and what does devotion mean. Although he is present in his abode, he is all-pervading. And everything is situated within him. So let's do what's unalloyed devotion mean? Western culture, here in America, there's this terminology, unalloyed steel. Maybe you've heard that one, unalloyed steel. So what's an alloy? Well, it's a mixture of something that's like an inferior, whatever it is. Mixing gold with other base metals and calling it. It's not unalloyed gold. It's not pure gold. Pure gold, there's a way to get it, but you have to do something to get it. You have to want it to do that something. And by that procedure, the alloys can be removed and you have pure gold. So something like that. It's not fire, but it's, one could say, the fire of devotion. That is one thing, nothing but one thing. Now, when unalloyed devotion is one thing and nothing but one thing, it might sound boring. Not boring. There's lots of diversity within the realm of devotion. For each person may have a particular liking for a feature of devotion. Some persons may like music, and music dedicated to singing and accompanying musical instruments to make a melodious sound. That's making an offering of sound and an act of devotion to Krishna. Some people might like cooking. I know some people like eating too. Like eating good cooking. And so they spend lots of time making very refined, getting out of the way to get the special ingredients to make a special preparation with lots of devotion. And because they invest devotion, not just because of the ingredients and their skill, but their devotion, it's a different experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There can be different ways of expressing. There are many ways. There's many ways. There's their varieties of activities in expressing devotion to the Supreme. So it's not that there's one thing and one thing only is boring or monotonous or one track. It's just the intent of being in relationship with Krishna, in offerings of loving gestures or activity or words or thought or something unto the Supreme. It's not boring. It is filled with diversity, but the mood of devotion is very singular. That's unalloyed. And devotion, simply put, it's engaging the senses in service of the master of the senses. There's a verse in Sanskrit that says that specifically. What's devotion? By definition, engaging the senses in the service of the master of the senses. So unalloyed devotion is all diversity with one singular focus. The singular focus, the emotion is love on the object of love, and the body or senses and the activities of life are going in that same direction, making an offering unto the Supreme, the object of love. So through that medium of unalloyed devotion, one can attain the Supreme. And then interestingly, I'll just read it again and we'll describe it a little abruptly. So get ready. Although he is his abode, that's Krishna saying he, like it's third person, but it's him. Although he is present in his abode, that is, there's a planet or an abode, a place where Krishna resides. But he also has many, many residences. Wealthy people sometimes have many homes. Just listening to Prabhupada being interviewed in New Zealand. And the reporter was asking, Swamiji, why have you come here? He said, it's my home. And I have many, many children here at my home. So I come to give them association and loving exchange. Then he said, and I have many homes. All over the world, I have many homes. And he wasn't joking. I mean, home is where the heart is, right? So he has many homes and many loving associates, many children. So that the reporter then asked, how many children do you have? He said, oh, around 5,000. There was laughter in the room when Prabhupada said like that. So the nature of the absolute truth, or Krishna, who's that which is the source of everything. So let's say it this way. There is nothing that exists other than Krishna or Krishna's expansions, his energy and his own form. He can expand his own form. And there's different Sanskrit terms for different types of expansions of Krishna's form. Some have different appearances. Some are multiple in the same place at the same time. There's terminology for all of this. For example, like in Krishna has 16,108 palaces and identical forms in each one of those palaces. Now, that's not ordinary. An ordinary entity cannot do such a thing, but Krishna can do such a thing. And it's not just different forms of Krishna in different palaces. There are different types and categories of Krishna's expansions. Without listing them all, you can read the purport at your own convenience. And there's some description with lots of references from the Upanishads and scriptural authority to support the fact that Krishna expands himself in so many, 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 many places. So while he is in his own abode, simultaneously, and many, many, many places. No problem. How is it not a problem? Because he has potencies that are unlimited and inconceivable. So something that is inconceivable for us doesn't mean it's inconceivable for Krishna, because he has potencies that are unlimited. Potencies are inconceivable, and through those potencies he does amazing things, very attractive things. Attracts the mind to the infiniteness of Krishna. And then the final statement of this verse, and everything is within him. How does that work? Because the Krishna are part of Krishna. Like, for example, it's a really easy example. There's the sun and there's the sunshine. Now, where I am, I don't know what's going on over there and wherever all of you are. Some of you in Chicago, and you probably in some other places. I'm over here in Portland, Oregon. And it was really hot today. It was 92 degrees. And it's still sunny. Now, maybe where you are, some places it's kind of the sun is setting. But the sun is overhead here in Portland, Oregon, and 92 degrees. So while the earth is turning, or however the scientific explanation, the sun is always there. But one may feel the sun is on my head, when in fact it's just up in the sky. And so Krishna can be present as energies, no problem. And therefore, because everything is present within Krishna's energies, everything is within Krishna. And this is part of understanding Krishna, such that one can attain him. And attaining him is what our topic is, discussion, attaining the Supreme. Understanding let's do it positive and negative. Understanding the nature of Krishna rests upon devotion. Say it the opposite. Resting upon devotion, it becomes then possible to understand the nature of Krishna. We'll say it negative. If one doesn't have devotion, it's whiplash. It's like, what? He's everywhere, and yet everything is within him. He's inside of everything and outside of everything. These seemingly, materially at least, contradictory statements about the nature of Krishna are easy to understand if one accepts he has unlimited and inconceivable potencies, and then it's not a problem at all. And yet, at the same time, he has his abode. And attaining his abode is what this chapter is, attaining the Supreme. And one will go to that place, his abode, and be with him by this unalloyed devotion. And what the mind does, and what the other senses of the body do. And that's yoga, the topmost system of yoga. So let's step back again from the starting point. Starting point is one way to describe what Bhagavad Gita is. It's a treatise on yoga systems. And there's this, that, the other yoga system. And then each of the yoga systems emphasizes a specific dimension or aspect of living or of life. And then the comprehensive, complete topmost system of yoga is this one. So because it's so important, Krishna speaks about it from a number of angles, but the essence is the same, unalloyed devotion. And by unalloyed devotion, one attains him, as we heard. One doesn't come back again to the cycle of birth and death, the place where there's no misery, no more birth and death, no more karma, no more modes of nature, no more good and bad. There's some bad people around, and there's no more good and bad. It's the stage of perfection. And there's a price to enter that, and that's the price is purity or unalloyed devotion. So that's the message of Bhagavad Gita. And I started a little bit late. That was my mistake. The car was ready. They were waiting for me, and I just was late. So we started a little bit late, but I think there's still some time for some discussion. If the online folks, I'm looking over here because that's where the computer screen is. Let's see if there's some discussion from any of you. Any thoughts or comments? You're all muted. You can unmute yourself if you want to discuss something.
Anyone like to pose a question?
Hare Krishna, I do have a question, but it's a little bit more related to the Maharaj class that he gave last night on Madhura Kadambini. So I want to leave it for the last, if that's possible.
Okay.
That's okay.
For those of you that are on the Zoom call, when this Bhagavad Gita discussion is over, I'm going to be discussing another topic. And you can join that other topic conversation if you want, but let's not mix the two. The other topic is Madhurya Kadambini. It's a description of the stages of bhakti. What it is, what bhakti is, and the stages of unfolding of bhakti.
So I had a question. It's not very well framed, but I'll try my best to.
Whatever you'd like. Whatever you'd like.
Yeah. So I wanted to understand. So when you said that everything is within Krishna, and so all activities that we're doing, be it music or cooking, everything is, can be in devotion of Krishna. So I was just wondering that man in the flight, when he was very caught up in stock market, I think probably that was his I don't know, that was his passion, or that was how he kept himself occupied. Like for me, like music is one thing that I get really caught up on, and if I have to perform somewhere and if the keyboard is not ready, or if the guitarist is not ready, I'll get really panicked. So I was just wondering if that is also a form of attachment.
Attachment. Could you turn the speaker so it's facing me? Thanks. Thanks. That's good. So the question is that also a form of attachment? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Of course. So let's do it this way. We're going to be, by nature, the souls have desire. It's a buzz to become free from desire. That's notional only because the soul by nature has desire. We have desire because we're part of who has desire. So we have desire, and with the experience of having a desire generally is desiring an object. So if one has an attachment for some temporary object, and can be attachment for that which isn't temporary, which is unusual in this world. So there's transcendental attachment to something that's not temporary, and that in the absence of the transcendental attachment, there's temporary attachment. So is it that if your question is that also a type of attachment? For sure.
Okay.
That man was absorbed. And I know that was just minutes that we were together. I imagine the rest of his life is similarly absorbed.
Got it. Yeah, that answers my question.
Now I have a question for you.
Okay.
You began your question with saying everything is within Krishna.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, what's the connection between everything is within Krishna and your question that says, is that a type of attachment also?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll probably take it to music. So I like to sing and perform, and so I think that is a way of devotion for me.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So I think music also is contained within Krishna. I mean, singing
Yes.
or
Yes.
that is contained within Krishna.
Yes.
And the fact that like if before the performance, if the like I don't have the correct instruments ready, or things are not, if I haven't practiced enough with the pianist or the guitarist, then I will get really panicked.
Mm.
So my question was, is that also a form of attachment? Because I am devoted
Oh,
to music and I want to give
well,
the best.
let's go back to that then. The
Hmm.
attachment can be there for one who has a worldly attachment, and attachment can be there for one who has a transcendental attachment. One who has a transcendental attachment is a candidate for attaining Krishna's eternal abode. Being attached to music is an attachment, and being attached to music for Krishna is a transcendental attachment. Now, supposing one has a transcendental attachment and all the musical instruments aren't ready. If you're attached to Krishna, then whether all the instruments are ready or not ready, it doesn't negatively impact your attachment to Krishna. It may not be an offering that you're feeling well prepared for and completely on the material side satisfied. On the other hand, when Srila Prabhupada began the Hare Krishna movement, he didn't have any instruments. He didn't have any instruments. It tells a story. There's a video. I'll send the video to Jamuna Jivana, and he can make it available to you since you like music, and to others. And Prabhupada is saying in the beginning, I had no instruments. All I had was a little drum, like a bongo drum, not a mridanga drum, just a bang, bang, bang drum. And that's all he had. Didn't have kartals, didn't have mridanga, didn't have harmonium, didn't have proper instruments, clapping of hands and a little drum. And every day for 3 hours, in this little video Prabhupada describes, they went into a park and they chanted. And from the chanting, then came clapping and chanting. And then came clapping and chanting and dancing. And then came, musical instruments from India. But it was ecstatic because of attachment to trying to please and serve Krishna. No, Prabhupada liked music. It's not that it's not specifically he liked music. He liked me, and he had musical talent. When he visited in New York, when I was staying in New York and Prabhupada was visiting in New York, there was a big front room in his quarters, and every evening, as busy, a world achari with everybody banging on his door and wanting his time and attention, he would go to a quiet place in the front room, large front room, and for maybe 20 minutes, sit with the harmonium and sing. And he wasn't singing for an audience. He was singing from his heart for Krishna. And the world was wherever the world was, and he was Krishna. It was really a sublime thing to observe. So I'm just making a comment. That's transcendental attachment and transcendental music because of the spirit of being attached to Krishna. Now, in course of time, some persons learned how to play mridanga, they learned this, they learned that, and kirtans took on another dimension. But the other dimension of musicality was resting upon the spiritual of Prabhupada's attachment to Krishna. So that's where we want to go with life. That's what this chapter 8 is describing also. Let's see if there's some other discussion points. Anybody else on the Zoom call you would like to contribute something?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Haribo.
I
Can
hear
me,
you.
Guru Maharaj? Oh, you hear me? Okay,
I can
so
hear you. I can hear you.
okay. So you were talking about you just talked about it, like for example, Srila Prabhupada and his attachment to the Lord, how strongly he was involved. I mean, how strongly he was attracted to the Supreme
We
Personality.
lost you.
Um,
We lost the connection.
oh, can you hear me right now?
I can hear you right now, but I lost you for a few minutes.
Hold on, let me turn on my AC. Maybe that's what it is. So you were saying how Srila Prabhupada was extremely attracted to the Lord, and how he was not necessarily affected by duality, and pretty much his heart was with the Lord. Like he wasn't really affected by material influences in any kind of shape or form. Now I work in a psychiatric clinic. I mean, not a clinic; it's more of a hospital, and sometimes I see a lot of psychiatric patients that externally, someone might say, they exhibit symptoms of like, medically speaking, they come hyper religious people. They just constantly talk about God, and there's nothing else but God, God, God. Most of the time, it's connected to Christianity or Jesus, or whatever religion they're following. Now, I think I do have an explanation why they act like that, but I just wanted to hear your take on it. Like, for example, like, what is the difference between someone who's genuinely attached to the Lord and someone that's maybe to some degree sentimentally or blindly believing in something that's not necessarily controlling his mind in a better way, in that kind of sense?
Well, let's go back to this lady's question who was just before you, and everything is within Krishna.
Mm.
That is to say, whatever exists in this physical plane has its counterpart and origin in the spiritual plane. This is a reflection of that. Everything here is a reflection of the spiritual realm. So my understanding, my assessment of what you described is just a reflection, a perverted reflection, not only a reflection. Now, that is to say, in the reflection, there's no substance. It looks like the thing because it's a reflection of the thing, but there's no substance in the reflection. For example, supposing you have a mirror, you have an apple, and there's a reflection of the apple in the mirror. There's no substance in that reflection of the apple. You can't get any nourishment from the reflection. So what is it? Back to your question, it's a reflection.
Mm.
And that there's some attachment, or hallucinated, or out of touch with reality kind of thing. The reflection is, it's indicative that deep inside there's something that's in the direction of transcendental, but it's not transcendental, it's a reflection.
Mm-hmm. And one more following question: is there any benefit in that at all?
Is there benefit in a reflection of the real thing? Yes. Let's do this. You know what chanting of the holy name is, and there's the pure chanting of the holy name, and there's a reflection of the pure chanting of the holy name. And that reflection is called namabhas. Abhas, you know the term, abhas means shadow. Or
Shadow. Yeah.
if you're chanting, yet it's not pure, is there any benefit? For sure, there's benefit. And these people that they're in this medical condition or mental condition that the thought of God is there, although who knows what exactly their thought really is, but it's in the mix somehow in the reflection. Is there benefit? Yes. It's not.
Now,
It's not the genuine full thing, but there's something. It's a reflection of the something.
no, is the benefit more materialistic, or could it could actually delve into the spiritual to some degree?
Well, it's not spiritual. It's a reflection of the spiritual.
It's a reflection of the spiritual. Mhm.
How are we doing? Anyone else?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. My name is Aditya. I have a question about brahmacharya lifestyle. I understand you follow brahmacharya. How is it possible do you have any tips or strategies to follow this stage of life? And how do you keep the mind always focused on the right path?
Well, that's a big question. Could you not wave your cloth? It's distracting. Thank you. Prabhupada's explanation of brahmacharya starts with training, and the training, he advocates that it's best, doesn't have to be, but it's best if it's done at the early stages of life. But in many cases, it doesn't happen at the early stage of life, but that's best. And the principle of that training at whatever the stage, it's control of the mind and senses. But how can you control the mind and the senses? And the answer is you give them better engagement, and then you can control them. We'll say it in negative. If you don't have a higher taste, then the senses and mind are likely to go to something lower, because higher taste lifts the mind and senses, and then they can become fixed. So the lifestyle of brahmacharya is a lifestyle of satisfaction within. Say it negatively. Without satisfaction within, one isn't going to be able to maintain that lifestyle. Say it positively. When there's satisfaction within, then one can maintaining that lifestyle is quite natural. And brahmacharya has a feature, and that is celibacy. And celibacy means the attraction for sexual activity with someone. I have to couch it in someone rather than male-female attraction, but female attraction, because that exists not only in humans, it exists in all species of life. It perpetuates life. The insects and the birds and the beasts and humans, and the perpetuation of species is resting upon procreation. So that it's built in. That male and female attraction is built into bodies to perpetuate the species. It's a strong force. And so brahmacharya means curbing that force unless there's a higher taste, or unless there's a satisfaction. And therefore the lifestyle of charya requires, naturally so, an inclination for those things, satisfaction within. And then when that deeper satisfaction within is achieved, then the standard of brahmacharya. So what are some of those things? person before you speaking that likes music. If one becomes absorbed, not just in musicality, but in the devotional feature of music or whatever, then that inner contentment makes maintaining a natural and easy to, when there's an inner strength and inner contentment, it follows very naturally. So that's it. That's a starting, and the association with others who are similarly living that lifestyle. Community, sangha, of persons who have that same interest. In inner absorption, inner contentment, and by association, others with that similar, it would make it easier for anyone, you or anyone, to live that lifestyle. Therefore, there's brahmacharya ashrams. And who, in consultation with his parents, who have an expectation that he's going to be like everybody else and do well in school and get a good job and get a good occupation and get a nice house and get a wife and have a family. He's not so attracted to that, but is attracted to kirtan. So his loving parents are making an arrangement that he's going to go join the Nama Yagya party in New York City. He really likes music, but he also likes chanting. He likes japa. It's easy for him to find contentment. And so it's a prerequisite. And so some sangha to help support it. He's going to be a fine young man, whatever the details of his life end up being. He's going to be a contented, happy person within. And that's brahmacharya, whatever else happens in his life.
March, there's a person by name Christian who is on the call, but rather that I'm going to repeat the question here.
It's a chat box question kind of thing?
Yes, March.
Okay.
I was wondering what the difference is between judgment and discernment. I find myself being quick to judge people who maybe act in ways that offend me or do things I don't agree with. And I know that's not a good thing for spiritual advancement. How can I discern without being judgmental towards people?
Well, that's a nice question. The answer is easy, and then doing the answer is not so easy. The answer is you become attached to Krishna. So discernment is a function of intelligence. I'll say in different language. A function of intelligence to discern or distinguish between this and that. An intelligent person can discern or distinguish or discriminate between this and that. So if your intelligence is in the on position and you're attached to Krishna, you're not judging, you're just discerning, like Krishna does. For example, Krishna describing the modes of nature. And then these are the symptoms, the lakshana of the mode of goodness, lakshana of the mode of passion. Over there is the lakshana of the mode of ignorance. He's not judging. He's discerning. And we can also, hearing from Krishna, have the lens through which we can discern this from that. That's a function of intelligence. So you're the senses send that this is Sankhya. The senses send the data, the signal to the mind. It registers in the mind. Then the intelligence. This is this and that's that. And there's a distinction between this and that. That's an intelligence function. Judging is I'm not attached to Krishna. So what am I attached to? You're attached to illusion. And in the illusion, this is pleasing to me, that's not pleasing. This is right and that's wrong. This is good and that's bad. Now, there is a sense of dharma. Like, for example, you shouldn't steal. Around the world, people will know it's steal property of others. You don't take. That's a discerning, and the judgment is you're bad. It's the modes of nature acting, and the modes of nature acting under Krishna's direction or sanction. So it's not exactly good or bad, it's what it is. So that's discerning. It's that. If you're attached to Krishna, as you become more attached to the Supreme, there he is. He did your picture one way, now it's you. Good. As you become attached to the Supreme, that's what this chapter is, chapter 8. Mind is upon Krishna, then your judgmentalism will subside and your discerning is what remains. And then what you do when you're discerning, supposing somebody's heading in a direction that's detrimental to them or to others or both, then you may want to say something that helps them or others or both, or pray for them if it's too remote or it's out of your scope. Unless, of course, there's ability to that person, then you're not judging, you're just serving the person. It really comes back to who's at the center of your life. Is Krishna at the center of your life, or are you at the center of your life? And then you're judging because this is displeasing and that's pleasing to me. The different way of life. I mean, discerning goes on whether you're judgmental or you're not judgmental. You don't shut your intelligence off to become a devotee, but you discern, and then through the lens of scripture, you see what's what, and then you think, what is the best means? What are the best means for me to be of service to this person so that they can move closer to Krishna? And that will help me become closer to Krishna. And judgmentalism keeps me stuck in the illusory realm that I'm at the center and my happiness is everything, and this isn't happiness for me, and so I'm judging it. And you can put in that space, it isn't of happiness for me or those dear to me or I and mine, because they're just connected. And then you can try to widen the scope without Krishna at the center, and it's still on the material side of the reflection rather than the reality. I mean, another simplified, that's yoga. Yoga is making the link with the Supreme. And when you make the link with the Supreme, you just dialed down judgmentalism, and you dialed up discernment. And then what to do in this situation or that situation, to say or do something, you also get that discernment or that intelligence. Dadami bodhiyogam tam yena mamupiyantite. One of the topics Jamuna Jivana was invited me to speak on was the 4 essential verses of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10. So what I just spoke is one of those verses. Krishna will then give you the intelligence in this situation, that situation, how you can best navigate your way to reach him and leave aside the judgmentalism, but then be of service to that other person in whatever that circumstance is that you were judging before. You now have freedom. And you have some keys that can help people also become free. That's yoga, or linking with the Supreme. How are we doing with time? I see it's a few minutes after the hour. We'll take another question, or one more, if there's one more question, and then we're gonna.
I think there was one more question from Austin. Austin, did you want to ask a question now?
I have a question, Maharaj.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay,
couple.
I'm looking at the Zoom screen, which is over to my left. That's why my head is turned that way.
Yes.
I'm trying to use the audio of a landline, and I'm struggling with it a little bit.
Go ahead. Go ahead. What's your question? Last question. You're on.
Now I'm feeling the pressure. Well, I would just say from my experience reading the Gita, I find it difficult for me to have developed a sort of catalog and distinguish between all of the chapters, because it seems as if topics get retouched and recovered.
Yes.
So I feel like each subject gets referenced within each chapter. So in any case, perhaps that's just a common experience of a neophyte. I haven't reached the end of the book yet.
You're stating an observation. Is there a question along
Yes.
with the observation?
No, not really. I guess that would you agree? Would you suspect that that's because I haven't yet reached the end of the Gita? I
Well,
simply need more exercise, more practice.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay.
Now, one of the presentations that I have made a number of times shows under magnification a tapestry. And under magnification of a tapestry, you just see threads. There's green ones, and there's red ones, and there's yellow ones, and there's different gold ones, and it's pretty chaotic. But then you say, hey, there's a gold one, and there's a red one, there's a green one. And I saw that green one before, it was over there. And so you start to see the connection. But if you go back a little bit, you get the big picture of what a tapestry is, it all makes sense. So are there themes that weave through the Bhagavad Gita, which is your question? Yes. And the tapestry is really beautiful. So as you or any one of us become a little familiar with I call it the big picture. What's the message of Bhagavad Gita anyway, besides this thread, that thread, and they seem to show up in different ways, in different angles at different times. To understand an object, it's often beneficial to look at it from the same object from a different perspective, which is what you're saying. You see strains of messages in Bhagavad Gita that repeat themselves, which is what happens. But it's part of a tapestry, it's part of a big picture. What's the big picture? And as you become more familiar or experienced or understanding of what the big picture of Bhagavad Gita is, it's kind of like this lady that spoke about liking music. When you put the whole nice piece of music together, it's very pleasing. Or a nice meal that's cooked very, very expertly. You look at this piece and that piece, and it's like, what's going on here? But then the whole big picture, it's very nice. So keep reading Bhagavad Gita with your discriminating intelligence at work, which it sounds like it's going on. And try to become focused in the purpose of it. It's not just information, it's devotion. Devotion means becoming attached to the object. Krishna, as you become attached devotionally to the object Krishna, you'll start to understand, oh, that's what's going on. Oh, this fits together with that so nicely, and so forth. You'll become very happy, and you'll understand a whole lot better. Keep going, little by little, and you'll noticing the connection between this other passage. You wiggle something over there, and it wiggles something over there. And then, oh, look at that. Something else is also wiggling. They're all connected. So then what's the big picture? Big picture is become attached to Krishna with pure unalloyed devotion. That's why I picked that particular verse to stress. So let's end here. Jivana Jivana, that's okay? We can end?
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you giving us your time tonight. I'm sure the devotees and the participants are feeling enlivened.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. So we're going to sign off, and I'm going to go on to this other class on Madhura Kandamati. I got a room full of kids here.
Sure, Maharaj. I'll close this Zoom meeting.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai.
Jai.